Hi. Hey, it's Bridgette. Welcome to Above Life Channel. The purpose here is to inspire your spirit and to fill you with hope. Today, we're going to have a conversation which I expect to be kind of brief, but I'm not 100% sure how it's going to go. I actually I had another person in mind for channeling today, and I wasn't able to I don't know, I just didn't feel like I'd much rather channel her. Her energy is very bright and inspiring, but as I was really struggling to just get in the shower today, I thought, I'm going to be open to who I can channel. So today we're actually going to channel Aaron Carter. So Aaron Carter is the brother of the Backstreet Boys singer Nick Carter. So you might know Nick Carter, you might recognize that name from the Backstreet Boys, right? Well, his brother Aaron had his own notoriety in the 90s, and but it's well known that he really had some struggles with addiction and things, and so he lost his battle with that, I guess you'd say, last fall. And so I remember when he died, and I just felt so sad. He had been on a couple of different, I think, talk shows too at one point. I think he may have been on Oprah. I can't remember exactly if it was Oprah back in the day. Um, and where he just really was trying to, find his way, I guess you would say. And like many stories that we hear of people who are struggling to be famous or to make it in the fame industry, and especially too, I guess, with a brother who had that, that notoriety, there had to have been some stuff going on there inside, that you could be at least sympathetic or compassionate about. And so I think because of my recent experiences and I'm just understanding like mental health and depression more specifically, I think it maybe opened me up more to being willing to talk with him on camera or to talk with people that are in that kind of state. I mean, he just really has when after he died, I just felt really sad but I wasn't surprised at all. And like maybe many of you if you're fans, and I just felt a heaviness and I didn't want to touch it. So I want to talk about that heaviness and what that is energetically, metaphysically, and in human form, because I think it's really important during our conversations about mental health and our wellness to be able to understand the kind of pressures that we put on ourselves and that those projections of our personal pressures that we're putting on ourselves are actually going out to other people, whether we know it or not, without intention. Like you're projecting that onto your kids. Just let that land for a minute. You're projecting that onto your loved ones, your friends, your family. It's not a judgment. It's more or less this fear of, I don't want that to happen to me, knowing that it could because you are also having internal dialogue and conversation that you, my friends, do not share with other people. And I know it because when I'm in session with you, I can hear that dialogue. Now, I don't hear all your little secrets or anything like that. Don't worry about that. However, I know that there is that struggle. There is that inner conflict within ourselves. And it might not be a huge area or issue for you or huge topic thing. It might not go into the realm of mental health, but for many people, it definitely dances that fine line, that cutting edge of that. And so I thought talking with Aaron, if I'm open to it, which I'm going to try to be, might be of use for us at this time. Okay. Now, just because we talk about difficult or heavy topics doesn't mean there's not an energy thread of compassion. In fact, quite the opposite. There's a lot of compassion that comes through and pours into ourselves and gives us the opportunity to soften our own opinions of ourselves, to relax that mind just that beats us down a lot based upon maybe early life experiences or parents or people that just they maybe meant well, maybe they didn't, but maybe they did. And we have this ingrained in the storyline of how things should be, how I should be, how I should behave, how I should behave in showing up in life. And also the comparison of the distance between who I am and who I'm not yet, or what I have and what I have not yet achieved, realized, or received in life. And so there's a lot here to kind of move through. Can you guys hear me okay? I didn't check myself on YouTube. Just going to wait for the chat to give me a thumbs up, please. Ooh, this is really hot. Ooh, got some really hot water here. Hot, 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 hot. Yes, thank you. All right, nice to see you in the chat. All right. I'm going to have to watch my time. I do have a timer set on my phone because I do have clients this afternoon, so that's good. But I showered, yay, and I'm showing up, yes. And so cheers to that. All right. Okay, so let's bring in Aaron. He actually has what looks like an angel kind of back in the day in old TV shows would be considered an orderly, like somebody with them, kind of helping them out, or maybe now like a care attendant or a CNA, like a certified nursing assistant, kind of somebody like that. And he kind of looks like he's maybe in the hospital energy, like a rehab facility, kind of like say you got knee surgery and you need to go to a place to like rehab yourself and you have to stay there. You don't really stay in the hospital for that long, but you stay in the rehab for like 3 weeks, kind of like that vibe. I get a little of that vibe. I like to describe to you what I see when I connect with people from the afterlife, because I think that this gives you an example. This isn't the only way that Aaron would look for anybody, but this gives you an example of how you interpret energy and how you can kind of understand what the afterlife is like or how that looks or really how it feels, because it's not a tangible place. It's energetic. However, we will use the framework of the mind in order to see and establish context. Understand? And by the way, the psychic gift of sight is called clairvoyance. So he has sort of an orderly or a person assisting him, and it does feel like an archangel Michael energy. It's a very blue energy and light blue, like a blue lace agate, like a very baby blue is like an angelic energy. So to me, that's very appropriate and it feels really good. And then there's a little bit of green as well. So green would be more of an archangel Raphael energy, and Raphael is a healing angel. When I work with you, if Raphael pops in, he's like my doctor angel. Angels are androgynous, so both masculine, feminine energies are non-gendered. However, I refer to them as he or she based upon what the dominant or lead energy that I feel from them as an embodiment feels like for me. Okay. I just want to be really clear on that, especially with the gender piece. I want to be really sensitive to that. So he is like my doctor angel. That's kind of what he does as specialist, right? So Michael is this protector, and I support you and I help you stand up tall. That's a big deal with Aaron because he's like this. Aaron's like hunched over. He looks like a really old man. He's like hunched over, like just hunched over. And he's just like, really tight. Like if he had a body, it would be really tight in the upper body, like really kind of closed in on himself. And to me, that's natural to see that. There's not, although it may trigger in you or this image might inject or infer suffering. I The goal for us with Aaron and I, and then Michael and Raphael, who are helping in this context of our conversation, is not to trigger or activate suffering within you, but to give you an understanding of how one would feel and then interpret this energy. Do you see? So it's not your suffering. It's not indicative to pull out your suffering and to feel really bad right now. It is about acknowledging the imagery and then the feeling that's associated with this. And so it brings you into the place of being able to relate. Do you see? To relate to this. Mhm. Just by saying the hospital type or a rehab type thing, many of you have had those experiences with loved ones or maybe yourself actually in the human life. So that triggers, right? Some things too, doesn't it? Yeah. So pay attention, you empaths, because that's what you people are. You human people that are watching this, you're empaths. And that's what you're here to learn about, is about energy and about understanding that emotion, about understanding the triggers that we get and how it's not from the other person, it's from inside you, and it's a natural pattern that happens for you. Okay, it doesn't have to be good or bad, it just is. It's information, okay? Mhm. Yeah, come on, coming in. Yeah, have a seat if you're comfortable. He wants to sit in a rocker. It's interesting. Um, so I've done a lot of work with trauma informed, not a lot. Okay, let me back up. I have done work with trauma informed care for myself. Okay, for me. And then back in 2020, when we were all locked in, I did an online class, which was actually continuing education credits for therapists. And there were social workers and therapists and a few, I don't know if there were any coaches in the class actually, but it was a trauma informed care class. And um, we talked about and learned about the somatics of things, the embodiment of things. And one of the tools to help your nervous system when you're in a state of fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. I'm not a counselor, but I know some of these terms. You will know too if you're watching TikTok therapies, therapists, or Google YouTubes. You know, so somatic thing is like a new trend. It's a new awareness of the body, how the body is responding, how it's holding, how its encodements are, how it naturally is like wired to respond or react in different situations based upon past situations. Yeah, that kind of thing. And so he's choosing to sit in a rocker. And it's not just a rocker that goes back and forth, it's a glider rocker. So it moves forward and back gently. And so what that tells me is that his body has held a lot of pain and trauma and suffering in his lifetime, which is why then it makes sense, you guys, that we would see him in a body that is in a wellness place or a healing state, which is like the hospital or the care facility to rehab him. Now, rehab him physically. Now, that sounds interesting, right? And maybe confusing because afterlife, well, if they're dead and they don't have a body, why would they need rehab? Oh, very good question. Thank you so much for thinking that, my viewer who is thinking that. Is there is a lot of information around this. We are going to ask him and talk to him about it. So you chose the rocker, and is it for the somatic? Yes. He says yes. He's just nodding and says yes. Rhythmic, repetitive movement. So that's what I learned about the trauma-informed care is rhythmic, repetitive movement helps to calm the nervous system. They use this in schools, by the way, you guys, with kids. Now we're integrating into therapy, like somatic therapy, for example. He's like just rocking in the chair and he's moving. It's that motion, that kind of just gentle flowing movement helps to calm the physical body. Aaron, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. He's like, yeah, he's kind of shy. He feels a little shy in his disposition. He's kind of shy. He says, I was pretty loud in my life. So, yeah, it's pretty loud in my life. He says they might not recognize that shy part. When you say, he says, when you say shy, they might not recognize me. He's quieter, soft-spoken than you might imagine. And so I'm going to intuit through my heart channel, empathically, through compassion. I'm going to feel what you're sharing and I'm going to share it. That doesn't mean I'm going to feel his feelings or a reflection of his feelings at the time of his death or during his life and his suffering, but I am going to feel what he is messaging is now for us as we connect as empaths here. Right? So I'm naturally just moving to match his rhythm. Do you see that? It's like matching his energy. I do appreciate you being here. I think it's very sweet that you're open to showing up now. And I'm not quite exactly sure how you came into my head today. It was today. He says, because he says, you can relate to what I'm feeling, at least to a part of it. I think many people can. And that's that depression, the depression part. Is that what you're talking about? Is the depression? He said, yes. He says, I have anxiety too. Like I had anxiety too. And then he's actually saying, people might have said that I was bipolar. He says, I wasn't bipolar. He said, the drugs made me that way. He says, so for me, everything got all confused and conflicted and all, he says, all fucked up because of the drugs, he says, I was on. So like prescription drugs, like to help with the anxiety and depression, he says, there's some of that, he says, but when you're mixing stuff, it's not so good. He's showing me something that's a real common drug for some, I can't tell if it's a depression drug. Is it like a Xanax or something? Xanax? Oh, he's showing me abusing medication before he actually got medication. He said, as a kid, I was really hyper. He said, I was really hyper. I had a lot of energy, like ADHD stuff, he says. But he says, but music was a way I could, not escape, he says, but music was a way that I could just be me and bring all of me. He says the best thing was like performing. He says, but the thing is like my voice wasn't always reliable. He says, when you work your voice, you can only work it so much. You can only do so many things to make sure it's going to work. And sometimes it doesn't work. He says, but sometimes medications, not like meds the doctor would give you, but meds you get yourself kind of thing, he's saying. Um, can kind of screw up your vocal cords, he says. Really screws up your body. He says, and if you smoke anything, whatever you smoke, oh my gosh, I'm really getting, wow, he looks like he's really been in the drug arena for a while. I don't really know how things by looks necessarily, but I'm seeing like a heroin kind of a vibe and a crack, actually. It looks bad. Like, I don't know what free basing is or something. He's showing me like cooking stuff, and I'm like, what the? And then he's like putting it into his arm and stuff like that. And it's weird. It's weird. It kind of looks like a caramelized something on a spoon. I don't know anything about this, and nobody in the chat has to say, hey, I know what that is. You don't have to say. But he said, yeah. He's like, I pretty much tried everything. Okay, so I need to find out about the body piece. We need to talk about this. And then I want to know why. Why drugs? Like, what were you numbing, or what were you doing with the drugs? What was that about? Okay, but can you talk about the body piece? Because see, at Above Life Channel, I do really want the people who are listening to understand. They're all empaths, so they can feel you, but to understand that about psychic stuff, like afterlife. So when you are showing up in a body, why is that? Like, why is this how it's working? Okay, so now literally I feel his higher self, which he's in spirit, you guys. First of all, Aaron, are you totally crossed over? Yes. He says, yeah, I'm more on this side than I am that side. I can tell you that. He says, I don't have one foot in each. He says, so basically he's not an earthbound spirit. He's not stuck. However, you're in like this almost, you're not fully just like freedom and like absent the body, because I really see your body. I don't just see an outline of your body. I physically see, I feel like I could almost touch you, my friend. So explain that piece to them. Why are you still attached to your body, and etherically, even in spirit? And it's not your human body, but it's the essence or the replication of the reflection of the human body. Why is that? By choice, he says, because I've chosen to work on it, with it. He says, I did a lot of bad things to my body. He says, I abused my body in many ways. And he says, my body deserves the chance to heal. He says, I'm not going to abandon myself now. He says, I had the choice when I transitioned. He said, when I died, I had the choice. I just wanted to get out of the pain, get out of my body, get out of the pain. And the pain, my body, I associated with pain. He says, I never really associated it with pleasure, even though like getting high or, going into that state of just kind of like zoned out. He says it's about escaping the body, not being with it. It's not really about pleasure. He says, people think, drug addicts or people who are any kind of addiction, actually. He's like, it's like you think it's a pleasure, like the high. He says, even if you have a drug that gets you in that space, it's known for that. He says, sooner or later, it just wears off. Like you don't have that. And then there's such a low, you get so low after, because you can't keep up with your physical body, just can't, it plateaus. He says it only gets you to a certain level and then it stops. And then it's just not worth it. He said, you can take more and more and more, but it doesn't work. That's why people introduce other stuff to try to get to that original high place. And it doesn't work, he says. And really the whole goal is to get out of the body, to escape the body's pain. It's not to gain pleasure. No, on the contrary, he says, it's just to stop the suffering just for a bit. I'm like, well, does it do that? And he says, He said, "I'd be lying if I said no." He says, "Momentarily." He says, "But you gotta think about it. It's like what comes after is," he says, "it's so much worse, the letdown." God, the letdown. That's why people get high and are just messed up, really messed up for days, he said, because you just can't, like, you don't wanna come down because when you come down, it's bad. He says, "You get sick, so sick, violent." He said, "You can't eat anything, you can't drink anything." Oftentimes, he says, when you're really high or really out of it, he says, you don't even know what day it is, you don't have time, you don't know anything, and that's great, but it's also not good for your body. You're not eating or you're eating everything or eating weird stuff. He said you would somebody could give you a couch cushion and say it's cake and you'd eat it because you think that's what it is. Like, you don't he says, "You don't even you lose all sense of anything, you know?" He says, "You're very, unattached." He says, "That part, that's what's intoxicating, that's what's enticing is, like, not attachment. Because when you're not attached, you don't feel pain." He says, "But the absence of pain isn't pleasure. That's not that's not what it is. The escaping pain, that's not pleasure," he says. It's not pleasure. So he says, I chose not to abandon my body here. I'm gonna keep it and I'm gonna heal it. So when I come back, I can be at peace with allowing myself to just be cared for, be cared for. He says, "It's awful how much we abuse our bodies. And he says, "I was a talker." He says, Bridget, you don't know this really, maybe. You don't know much about me." I said, "I know." I literally said that. I said, "I'm going to channel Aaron Carter." And I literally know nothing about this person, just a few bits and pieces. That's it. And I said, I don't even know the songs. I'm sorry, you guys. If you're an Aaron Carter fan, go ahead and post some of the songs that you liked in the chat window if you're on the live stream, or if you're watching this after the fact, then post it in the comments, okay? Because that's a way to really honor the legacy of a person, right? To focus on the good that they contributed, not all the drama or the negativity associated with their life. It's about a balance, right? So at some point, will you let your body go? I've seen this before too, by the way, you guys. I've seen this exact kind of thing before. I'm trying to remember who exactly I saw with. I've seen it in private session when I've done mediumship with people. I've seen this same thing, especially when somebody has like stuff that they have like regret about in this lifetime. Um, like if it's an abuse situation, like if it's a parent that abused a child or something like that, sometimes that will be a scenario where they look like they're healing because they have a lot of internal angst about it and a lot of pain about it and all that. Um, uh, Oftentimes when people choose to take their own life, to end their life that way, then I will often see this too. It just takes a while, you guys. It takes a while. And the spirit has choice. The spirit has choice, you know, how it's going to handle things. So it's not that he's stuck to his body. I don't want anybody to hear that. This is a choice he's making right now. And it feels like he'll be able to shed that or clear that whenever he chooses to, whenever he feels like he's come to a done point. But he's like, "I got angels with me." Yeah. He says, "Michael's badass. I really like him." He says, "He really just keeps me straight, focused, and like standing straight up because he's all hunched over." "Oh, yeah. Can you tell me why the hunched over part?" He says, "Yeah." Okay, now I can see him in clothing because before I could see him just kind of in the hospital robe thing. So now he opens it up a little bit and he has this black, long sleeve black men's dress shirt and it's just buttoned up to about here and it's open. And it looks like he's got tattoos here. He's got some big cross thing somewhere. I can see a cross. There's a cross somewhere here, it looks like, and like faith or something. Like there's a lot of stuff. He says, "I had a lot of body art." I'm like, "Okay." I don't know. All right, I don't know. But he's wearing a black shirt, black button-up shirt, like more dressy. He's like trying to be like presentable, I guess. That's really nice. Thank you for that. Hmm. Did you have a cologne? Because I smell you have a scent about you. It's interesting. It kind of feels earthy a little bit, but a little bit pepper-like. I don't know. It's interesting. You guys, did he have a cologne? Do you know? You know how they used to do that? I don't know if I mean the women do that now, but a lot. Oh, I only have about 5 minutes left, you guys, to chat. Maybe 7. It's a good thing my client at 1 is amazing, and I love her, and she's probably watching. Hi. Actually, she's probably not watching yet because she's on the coast, and so she's probably just barely awake now here, but she's great. We talk a couple times a month, which I do, by the way, private sessions, psychic and coaching sessions. Mhm. So, Aaron, will you talk about, yeah, if he had a cologne or something, put it in there. All right. So I want you to talk about your brother and stuff and fame. Can you talk about that? Is like, why were you addicted to stuff? Why did your life take the path it did? Can you help us understand that? Because there are people who here who love people who are depressed and anxious and have mental health struggles. And there's also people that are watching who are in that boat themselves personally. And there are also people who are listening that have addiction or have people that they love or madly in love with that have addiction or kids or whatever in their lives. So tell us how you ended up to that place, or why. Why did your life take the path it did? Right away, he says fame. He says, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. And I'm not gonna blame fame. Like I mean, I wanted that as much as the next guy, I wanted that too. I wanted the fame. I wanted it. And he says it is a little bit of an, oh, that's interesting. Cause I'm like, is it an expectation in your family? He says a little bit, yeah. He says, you might say that. You might say that. He says, but he's like, I don't want to blame anybody. He's like, my mom, especially, like, I don't want to blame anybody. He says, I don't want to put this on anybody. He says, I'm responsible for my choices. That's just that, he says. And a lot of people who are addicts will project outward. They'll like lash out to try to get you away from them. So they'll be mean. They'll be just nasty. And that's just a tactic, just if anybody's watching and you're dealing with somebody that's addicted or that's really struggling. He says, that's a tactic. That's just a tactic. That's just a tactic. We just do that so you leave us alone. You just leave us the fuck alone so we can get high or do whatever the fuck we want to do. Keep messing up our lives, yeah. But we're going to be real nice to you when we need money. We'll do that. Or we need a place to stay. Wow, that's intense. That's very direct, you guys. That was very direct. He shows me Las Vegas, like the strip and stuff, and I don't know if it's just crazy busy stuff, and he's trying to describe how life felt, like just everything in your face. And I've never been to Las Vegas. I've never been to Vegas, you guys. But he's showing me like lights and flashing stuff and noises and sound and all this stuff and all this energy. And he said, like, he's kind of showing me like that's what life is like all the time. Was there competitiveness with your brother? Like, did you have any kind of, he says, we weren't talking. He says, we weren't talking. It looks like he has a sister too, actually. And then there's somebody named, I think, there's actually a Courtney in the feed here. I just saw their name. It feels like, you know what the vibe I'm getting? I don't know if this is, so what day is it today? Is it the 28th, March 28th? It's either the 27th or the 20th. Let me check my phone here quick and see. March 27th. It's Monday, March 27th, 2023. I'm getting a little Kurt Cobain vibe. I don't know why that is. Kurt Cobain, Courtney Love, like kind of vibe. I don't know what that's about. That just literally slid in here. Not sure if he was like a Nirvana fan or if he was a Kurt Cobain fan or if all of a sudden I'm getting a vibe because of oh yeah. I'm like literally seeing the hotel room that Kurt spent time in. Like on a bender? Is that what it's called? Bender, where he like would just lose track of days and just get really high and just really fuck things up. I'm getting that image. I don't know why. I don't know if that's the same thing that Aaron did or not, or if there's just a random factoid coming in about Kurt or Courtney today. I don't know if there's an anniversary or a birthday, or I don't know what's up with that, but all of a sudden it just came in. Or Aaron's showing that to me to understand what it's like, you know? His sister, he's saying his sister, and then all of a sudden I hear this Courtney vibe or the name Courtney, but then I see there's a Courtney in the chat, so I'm not sure if that's just maybe I sensed a Courtney, and I'm looking at you right now, my friend. I'm not sure. Hmm. That's what happens when we're live. I can feel a lot of stuff. So, all right. So how did you end up there? Fame? Hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of pressure, he says, to get it right. To get it right. And he says, I'm not saying I wasn't driven. I'm not saying I didn't want that for myself. I did, but he says I thought it would be a lot less intense than it was. So you're saying it was hard? Well, it's like, anything worth having, they say you got to work hard for. And he said, I wasn't really afraid of work. He said, but Nick was the one that was the focus, He says, Nick just, and then he shows me Australia. Like, I don't know if he did a tour or something in Australia. He ended up in Australia. I'm not sure what that's about. I see Australia. Not sure. Yeah. He says, nobody else outside of you can match that pressure you put on yourself inside. He said, I know there's other circumstances and there's a lot. He says, but when you're in an industry, when you choose fame as a career goal, he says, you're going to get a lot of shit. You're going to just get a lot handed to you. And he says, you got to be willing to take that. He says, it's real nice when you get a taste of that fame, He says, it's real nice. But you can't stop working then. Then you got to work harder and you got to be willing to change. And he says, it's not that I wasn't. He said, I was young, I made mistakes and I didn't realize the opportunities I really had when I had them, I just didn't know. Yeah, my brother and I weren't talking, he says. So, but that's not a dig on him. He says, I'm not angry about that or anything. I'm sure he has regrets, And if I could, tell us if you could say something to Nick, what would you say? I love you. I love you, bro. I'm sorry. Sorry about all the pain I caused and the shit show it was, I'm sorry for that. All right. Okay. Thank you for being honest and authentic. Thank you for showing up and talking to us about some of the stuff. I mean, I could talk a bit longer. I'd love to talk to you a little bit longer, but I got a session. I got a real person session and they're paying me and I need to make some money. So I need to go. But thanks for coming in and having a conversation today. Appreciate it. And thank you for having the courage to show up in real for me, for being real about the afterlife and about addiction and about the struggles in the human life and how that is working for you as you're healing in the afterlife. Thank you for showing that. I think it's going to help a lot of people understand. Mm-hmm. So when you do leave this plane, whether you do it on your own accord or through whatever happens to you on your path, that you still got to deal with yourself. Just so you know, death sometimes I think seems like this mysterious, peaceful escape. And while that might be true for a hot minute, in the afterlife, you are with you and you have to face you. So you don't really escape. That's not how it works. So, and yet you can also choose to leave the pain behind. There's not just one way to transition and move into the afterlife. There's not just one way of healing. Like it all has to happen here and then you let go. I think there's a lot of pressure on people, especially like in the end of life things like in hospice care, et cetera, where there's a lot of pressure to be like, make sure you tell them you love them. It's like, yeah, but if Johnny never told his dad he loved him in the human life, him telling him at the last minute, you really think that's going to make a difference? That's the only reason why dad has not left his body is because Johnny didn't say, I love you. And it's like, that's not even, that's just, that's movie stuff. That's not real. It's more the hearts, that telepathy between hearts, that empathic energy, that understanding, that learning growth connection, and that we transcend at a soul level. That's more important than anything. And being present and what's authentic, not a fake I love you at the last minute. It's not going to do it. That's not the reason why they're hanging on. They're hanging on for their own shit, not for us. It might have something to do with us, but we can't, if I forgive you, then you can die. No, that's not what happens. It's not like that. You are not the magic key for somebody. Do not put that pressure on humans, please. Life is really about ourselves and the choices that we make, and the interconnections that we have can certainly help us. They can inspire us and support us, and they can make things extraordinarily difficult and painful too. Yeah, especially in toxic situations or abuse situations and that kind of thing. But you have choice in the afterlife too. Just be assured of that. Okay. All right, my friends. Thank you, Nick. I appreciate you coming by. He says, hey, he's like, I can't believe you talked to me. He says, I can't believe you talked to me. I'm like, oh my God. He's like, I'm the Oprah in the afterlife. He's like, oh, I can't believe you talked to me. I'm so not famous. And please don't tell me I'm famous with the dead people. That would be about it for me. That would be about it. How about with the human people? Because they're the ones that I can actually make a living with. Oh, double metaphor there. Make a living with. You do have a sense of humor. I like you. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being here. And thank you for watching this video, this channeling video at Above Life Channel. The purpose here is to inspire your spirit and to fill you with hope. And I hope that you get the opportunity then through these channeling videos to see that you are intuitive, you are connected, you can communicate. And the most important thing to do is to be communicating inside yourself and to connect inside yourself. So you don't have to constantly be struggling yourself or arm wrestling yourself inside. It's not worth it. That's why the work that I do is about intuition and coaching to work with the mind, the heart, the body, and the soul so that you can be in alignment, so that you can really live your life. Because the purpose of life is to live it. Do you hear me right now, viewer? I'm talking to you. The purpose of life is to live it. Just live it. Thanks for being here.